So, and I know the central, in your struggle.
Yeah. The question 3, as printed there, is basically asking us to speculate. It's a counterfactual. And counterfactual questions are the most difficult. They're very difficult to answer. I think there were 3 countries in which change was possible, though this is, of course, remains a debate. And if in these 3 countries change had happened, the overall impact on the world would have been very positive. Which were these 3 countries? France, where I already said that the level of political consciousness of the French workers and students and others supporting them by the end of May, early June, was at a very high peak. And when these movements reach a high peak, either they are resolved positively or the level of political consciousness comes down. That is the history of every revolution which has taken place in Europe and elsewhere. And I think that the discussions that took place then, which we don't have time to go into now, were very linked to the historical memory of the French people. And these were to do with 1789, 1793, 1848, and especially for the left, 1871, the model of the Paris Commune, which was the most democratic model of the revolutionary movement till that period. And had that model been accepted and taken forward, who knows what history would have been like. And this applies also to the discussions that were taking place in France in '68, but the left was divided. The largest single party of the working class was the French working class, and the leaders of the French Communist Party felt, and they may have been justified, we can't tell now, that there would be civil war if they tried to take power, because de Gaulle had gone to Germany to ask the French army stationed in Germany, if Paris has to be liberated again from the mob, I need your support. So it's an open question what could have been done, but there were possibilities. Secondly, Czechoslovakia. This was a completely unnecessary invasion by the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact countries. If we had had a single model of socialism and democracy operating even for 3 or 4 years in the world, it would have created at that particular point in time a huge enthusiasm. And the third was Portugal. Here it wasn't so much a question of civil war, because the Portuguese Revolution was created by an anti-colonial revolt, imperialism, by Portuguese soldiers and young officers fighting in the colonial wars in Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea. And when you read what they were reading Che Guevara, the history of the Cuban Revolution, and we now know, because many have written memoirs, they said we were following the struggle of the Vietnamese every single day on our radios. And the Portuguese who had to read these texts, Che, Mao, Ho Chi Minh, etc., anti-imperialist texts by these leaders, said that many of them who led the revolution said we were won over by these texts. They made a lot of sense to us. And it was this layer from within the Portuguese army which led the revolution. So the spinal cord of the state had already been broken by the colonial wars. The big problem, in my opinion, of Portugal is that the Portuguese Communist Party and the entire far-left groups were completely ultra-left. A country which has known 70 years of semi-fascist dictatorship, the slogan you put up before them is, we are fighting for the dictatorship of the proletariat. When the only dictatorship workers and citizens know is what has been inflicted on them. And Mário Soares, backed by the Portuguese socialist leader, backed by the German Social Democrats, said, we agree with all the demands of the movement, we'll nationalize the land, we'll have our factory, everything everything he said, but then he would say to a crowd of 500,000 people, but do we want dictatorship in any form? And unsurprisingly, they said no. And he defeated the left and the CP ideologically. That's a fact. Unfortunate. The last point I want to make is back up Angela very strongly. If you ask which of the two movements survived, changed, but kept their core in some ways, it was not the groups. The big working class parties collapsed. The far left is in a state of crisis in most places. New groups are coming. I don't want to say that, in different parts of Europe, but it was effectively the women's liberation and the gay liberation movements which went on. In some cases, look, in '67, homosexuality was legalized in Britain, and roughly the same period in other parts of the world. 50 years later today, if you don't support gay marriage, people think you're deeply reactionary. That's how the state has incorporated it, but that's what's happened. And like sections of the black movement, sections of the women's movement which arose in those days have also been incorporated into official mainstream black politics, official mainstream feminist politics, and official mainstream gay politics, but there are currents within them and on their fringes who are fighting back. Huge demonstrations in Brazil by women, 100,000 in Sao Paulo, 60,000 in Rio against sexism, and recently 100,000 in Rio against the killing of Marielle, a great comrade, a great feminist, a great fighter, fighting against police brutality. In India, there have been mass mobilizations against public rape of women. Flash mobs of women have gone and disrupted the people supporting the semi-fascist government in that country and how they attack women. Huge demos in Argentina. A Polish women's movement has stopped the government in its tracks from further diluting the abortion laws. So these struggles take place, and they also show us what was possible and might have been possible much, much sooner on all these different political, social, economic levels had we had 2 or 3 victories in the United States. Maybe in the world in the 60s. We would have made mistakes, the left would have made mistakes, it goes without saying, but hopefully they would have learned by their mistakes if there had been democratic functioning as well.